Mary Magdalene, dignity restored in a patriarchal world. Beyond his revolutionary ethical teachings, Jesus demonstrated an even more radical departure from societal norms in his treatment of women. Archaeological evidence from first-century Palestine reveals a stark reality. Household artifacts and legal documents consistently positioned women as property, denied basic rights, and relegated them to subordinate roles. In this historical context, the most significant event in Christian history, the resurrection, was first witnessed not by religious authorities or male disciples, but by a woman deemed unreliable by every standard of her time. The status of women in first-century Palestinian society was severe in its restrictions. Women existed primarily as extensions of their male relatives, fathers, husbands, or sons. Their testimonies held no legal weight in courts of law. They were systematically excluded from public religious instruction and confined largely to domestic spheres. This social reality was codified through legal frameworks that reinforced female subordination generation after generation. Mary Magdalene emerges from this oppressive backdrop as a figure of profound theological significance. Her identity has been debated by scholars, with various traditions conflating her with other women mentioned in gospel narratives. What remains undisputed across biblical accounts is her pivotal role as the first witness to the resurrection, Christianity's defining moment. Imagine the scene at dawn. Mary approaches the tomb, her steps heavy with grief. The morning air still carries the chill of night as she discovers the stone rolled away. Confusion mingles with fear as she encounters emptiness where she expected death. In that transformative moment, a woman deemed socially insignificant becomes the bearer of history's most consequential news. The gospel narratives unanimously place her at this empty tomb, entrusted with announcing the resurrection to the male disciples who had fled or hidden themselves following the crucifixion. This assignment represented an extraordinary theological statement. Jesus directly contradicted established societal norms that rendered women's testimonies worthless. The resurrection account deliberately positions a woman as the primary witness to an event that would become the cornerstone of Christian faith, effectively founding a world religion on testimony that contemporary courts would have dismissed without consideration. Jesus' interactions with women consistently violated established social boundaries. His conversation with the Samaritan woman at the well transgressed multiple social taboos simultaneously, a Jewish man speaking publicly with a woman, a religious teacher engaging with a Samaritan, and a respected figure associating with someone of questionable reputation. The disciples' astonishment reveals how profoundly his behavior contradicted social expectations. These interactions formed a consistent pattern throughout Jesus' ministry. Women traveled with him as disciples, a practice that fundamentally contradicted Mediterranean honor codes. In the honor-shame culture of first-century Palestine, a religious teacher allowing women to join his entourage would have invited immediate social censure. Yet the gospel accounts mention several women by name who supported Jesus' ministry both financially and spiritually. The early Christian community's inclusion of women in significant roles suggests that Jesus' revolutionary approach to gender relations influenced his followers' social organization. This inclusion represented a decisive break from both Jewish and Greco-Roman religious traditions that largely excluded women from public religious functions. Evidence shows that subsequent generations attempted to diminish Mary Magdalene's role as apostolic witness. The persistent efforts to redefine her, variously as a prostitute, a sinner, or merely confused, suggest a desire to reconcile the radical gender egalitarianism of early Christianity with the patriarchal structures that re-emerged as the Church developed formal hierarchies. By elevating women to positions of spiritual significance, particularly in the resurrection narrative, Jesus established a theological foundation for female dignity that transcended contemporary cultural limitations. This foundation would influence Christian perspectives on women's capabilities, spirituality, and worth across subsequent centuries, even when institutional practices failed to fully embody these principles. This revolutionary approach transformed women's status throughout subsequent Christian history in complex ways. While institutional Christianity often reverted to patriarchal norms, the underlying theological principle that women could serve as authoritative witnesses to divine truth remained an uncomfortable contradiction within those very institutions. This contradiction created space for recurring movements advocating women's dignity and religious participation throughout Christian history. Jesus' treatment of women fundamentally challenged the social norms of his time, establishing a theological basis for female dignity that would influence subsequent generations and contribute to the evolution of women's rights within Christianity.